All right, so let's talk. Impressions on the game. Let's start with design of the game in terms of like visuals and so on. The style is very reminiscent of Slay the Spire. It's that kind of same. I don't know how to describe this. It's like, how do you describe this art style? It's like somewhere between cartoony and cel shaded look. And I think it fits okay. At first, when I first saw it and when I first started playing it, I was a little bit like, okay, it's a little bit not amazing. Yeah, children's book. Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it. But the more that I played it, the more that I liked the design. And there are a lot of little things that are included. Like I mentioned before, certain units have, like, they animate according to the situation, which I think is kind of cool, right? So your guy with the gun, he has a different idle animation when he's prepared to do his cannon, and then once he uses his cannons, then he has a different idle animation. The blood champion, similar. When you have your what are they called? Blood strikes. I don't know if they're called blood strikes, but what you get when you hurt yourself or when you get hurt, then she has a different idle animation. Blood burst, and yeah, exactly. Then you have a different idle animation. So there's a lot of like little things like that you start to notice that I really appreciate. Like kind of cool, a visualized representation, which you don't see in a lot of these games, right? Like you don't see a lot of variation. The units kind of position the same regardless of what's happening. Even in Monster Train, right? So Monster Train, which I think is one of the best visually designed deck builders, there's no difference. Like you jack up a unit, the only thing you're going to see different is the fact that they're large or small. So I like the idea that like based on certain modes you have animated or different idle animations. I thought that was really cool. Enemy design ranges from like really good to overly simplistic. So I don't think every enemy design nails it. I think some are just like much better than others. So for example, like the Frost Giant is a pretty bad, I think, design. The bats are kind of meh. The weird tree things are kind of cool. The bosses have much better design, I think. So it's across the board. It goes from like, I think, really good art to kind of mediocre art. This in particular, this UI here, I really don't like. I think that, I don't know what it is about this. So if you compare this with something like a game that has this very similar broad selection based on buildings, would be like Darkest Dungeon. Like Darkest Dungeon is, I think, well represented in terms of like the art style of even the main UI menu. Where here it's kind of all over the place and nothing seems to be very cohesive. It's like a bunch of random stuff. Like this doesn't really fit, like doesn't really seem like it's settled very well. The Forge in the Mountain, it stands out from the mountain like it doesn't really fit here. It also looks like it is levitating, but somehow the architecture is not fitting. So there's some stuff here on the UI that could be improved, and on some of the design that could be improved. The UI of the View collection is kind of clunky. I would much prefer if you could just right click instead of having to click a box here for upgraded. I think a UI improvement, for example, could just be you click on the card. I mean, right now clicking on the card does nothing. So why not add a click on the card to show you the upgraded version, for example. That's like minor stuff, right? Also, there's no visual representation of the card telling you to which group it belongs to. So there's a couple things like that. Like I don't know types, right? Luckily, there's only like 2 rarities, so that's a little bit easier. You have the gold versus the not gold. But yeah, there's the type. Origin is what I meant. Sorry, there's no way to like see origin. I guess you kind of get it with, there's no real way. And so for me, it would be great if there was some way to indicate origin as well. Again, more visualization. Some of the cards are not clear how they operate, so there's some like stuff there that could be improved. So this is all like art, design, the visualization that I think has a lot of room for improvement. But there's also some things that are like I think they nailed really well. As I said, the character, the actual champion design is really good. The animations, the idle switches between modes is really interesting. So there's a lot that I like there. There's just areas I think as well that can be improved, and I think that that's on the roadmap. I don't think that that's not planned, but there's opportunities there. So that's kind of the art, design, UI aspect of it. Second is sound and music. Someone mentioned that it's kind of like Slay the Spire. I didn't really catch that it was like Slay the Spire, but the music for me is a little bit monotonous. I think that it's hard to find something that's repeated that isn't monotonous, to be fair. But like even listening right now, like hearing this over and over again, it kind of digs a little bit the longer that you listen to it. The combat music's a little bit better. I think it's a little bit more energetic, and it doesn't get quite as grating as some of the musics. But like the in-between music, and especially this intro music here, is not my favorite. I would, if I could, change the music in some places as well. Again, it's hard. There's some really high standards. Monster Train is one of the best soundtracks. Slay the Spire soundtrack is okay. It's not amazing either. So, I mean, in the genre, it's not that I would say music is like the highlight anyway. But I think that it could be improved, especially some of this music I think could be improved. In terms of sound, I think it's okay. Some of the sounds are not quite impactful when you're like doing certain animations. In particular, and this was surprising to me, the Blood Champion sounds were really strange to me, and they didn't seem to fit like what was happening on the screen. So maybe some sound improvements around this particular champion. I like Ceylon's cannon sounds, I think are quite good. Some of the Frost stuff as well, as you have that like Frost, but I think you could have it be more punchy, if that makes sense. A lot of them, a lot of the sounds are, how do I say it? They get lost because they're not punchy enough. Like, I think you should hear a zap, that should be punchy. You should hear a frost. There should be a distinct difference when they get frosted. That should be really punchy. So I think that there's some sound stuff that could be improved to really emphasize, on top of like the animation, how much this is affecting, right? Like, it's a small thing, but I think that there's an area here that can be improved. And especially for some reason, and maybe it's just me personally, but Drophis' sound design is a little bit weird with her blood magic. It doesn't. I didn't think it gelled super well with the character, but most of the others are okay. But again, I think some of the effects could be improved and make them a little bit stronger in terms of sounds than they are right now. Let me think if there's anything else around sound and music to cover. Probably not. I think that's a pretty good overview when it comes to sound and music. So some improvements on the music side, some areas where sound can be better, some areas where sound is quite good. As I said, some of the characters have really good sounds. In particular, the tools, the cannons, those are quite good, and I really like those, but some of them are kind of like okay. The strike sounds are, I would say, in the okay realm. Like, they're pretty punchy. It's the chung chung chung, right? So that's quite nice. And then you have other ones that are just kind of like, poof, like. So I think there's some opportunities there to make the sounds more impactful. Moving on, let's talk about the core. So not talking about deck building. Let's talk about the core, like actual turn-based play. I think is quite good. It's very reminiscent of Slay the Spire. Which kind of really set the tone for a lot of how these games play out. Things that I like about it. I really like the status bar effects and the increasing difficulty of enabling status bar effects. Super unique. I have not seen that in any other game. I really like it. I think it gives you this, where oftentimes the scaling in games is based off of how much of it can you do. It's refreshing to have a game where the scaling is how quickly can you do it, and can you do it consistently. And there's a lot of play there, right? That you can have like meditation, becomes good because it enables you to be more consistent with enabling status effects, and I really like that. I think it's a design that other games should adopt. I think it's a fantastic way to give more variance in the effect when the effect is the same. You freeze the unit, but you have a lot of variance in how effective cards are doing that, and that's unique. I've never seen that before. So again, I really like that, and I think would like to even see more of that if they develop other types of status effects on top. I don't know that some of them would work, like poison. I don't know if that works as a status bar. Probably why it's not a status bar, but that's okay. In particular, status effects in general are quite interesting, but there are some that I don't love. I think in particular, bleed on enemies is pretty bad. Maybe there's a way to do it differently, but the fact that enemies typically do one thing and bleed is a mechanic where enemies are doing multiple things, that tends to feel bad because you build up bleed and then it's just like it doesn't matter because they get rid of it in one turn. So I think there needs to be some adjustment around how certain effects affect enemies versus you. Maybe some changes, for example, could be a lot of times units have enemies have multi effects. Maybe if multi effects triggered more bleed. So like if it's going to shield and buff, then it gets 2 impacts of bleed. Maybe that makes it better. As well, some of the status effects, how do I say it? Like the way that they scale is sometimes hard to read, because some things are scaling linearly. So the more you add, the more of it you have. So for example, if I have a lot of powerful, that increases the amount of powerful, but if I have a lot of tough, it's duration. And if I have, so this mix of like the number not always reflecting the same thing, I don't mind that it's that way. I think that that's fine, that some things add the amount and some things add the length, but I would like there to be a visual representation of that makes it distinct. I don't know if you do like, I don't really know how you do it, but currently that kind of muddies it, and you have a UI where you show status effects in the same way, but actually they have different meanings. The numbers have very different meanings. As well, some of the status effects, it's hard to understand how, I mean, obviously I was making mistakes with things like growth. That growth also has a secondary effect. How is that secondary effect visualized? Well, you don't see it, it just kind of happens in the background. Also, there's not an indicator, for example, how much mana am I going to get? I think there's a lot of things in that area that could be improved, and maybe that's a little bit UI as well, but anyway, so I think, I mean, the core is solid because it's built on a solid foundation, which is Slay the Spire. The additions, the changes, I like a lot. The scaling statuses I think are fantastic. There's some UI readability that can be improved, and certainly there's opportunities for more mechanics to add than what's in the game list. I haven't unlocked everything, but I think I've seen all the status effects. I'm pretty sure I've seen all of the types of things that you can do. I assume it's combinations of them that I have left to unlock. But in general, I like the combat. I think the visuals, the UI, and some of the information given to players could be improved. Then deck building. And this is the main conceit of this game versus a lot of other games. The fact that you decide on your starting deck and the fact that you decide on your pool. I love it. I think it's such a unique take. It's very similar to like Loop Hero, right? Or that was one of the main appeals of Loop Hero, is that you get to decide what you get. And so you dictate a lot how you're going to play. And I like that idea in a deck builder like this. It's one of the things that I don't love about Slay the Spire, Monster Train, and other similar games, is the fact that you have zero control. You pick a champion or you pick a clan combo, and that's it. Then it's all up to, Allah, up to God to decide, RNGesus, what cards you get in the game. And so you might want to play a build, you might want to investigate a certain archetype, and you just get unlucky and it never shows up, right? Some people would love to play in Monster Train, you'd love to play Eel Gorgon, but it's a rare card and you don't see it for 20 runs, and you're not hardcore like I am with over 1,500 hours, and that can be very frustrating. You want to play a card and you just never see it. And in this game, that's mitigated tremendously. I've seen every card in my pools. Like you do. It's the fact that you've limited it to 30 cards and you have drafts, multiple drafts throughout the run. A lot of drafts throughout the run. You're gonna see your pool, and I love that. I love that you get to kind of set the terms. Although there's the RNG element, you aren't gonna see all your pool. There's parts of it you're not gonna see in a run. Across multiple runs, you are going to see your whole pool, but in a single run, you won't. And so, although you have some level of control, it's not ultimate control. And there's a clear difference between starting cards and the kind of cards you can get in the pool. And I think that makes a lot of sense. The starter cards are weaker, and they should be, but there's still so much flexibility in them. Far more flexibility than you get in any other game in the genre. So that is awesome. And I think. Again, similar to like the scaling status concept, that is something that could be applied to multiple deck builders, and I really like it. I think it's one of the main enjoyable parts of the game is designing a deck in a pool and then playing it out to see how it translates into action. Right? That's really, really cool. Okay, other aspects, the meta growth aspect of the game, or the meta scaling aspect of the game. So I might be in the minority. I don't like meta scaling. It's one of the reasons I didn't like Hades. I love Hades, and I beat Hades. But what always frustrated me about Hades is that the game got easier the more that I played it. And that's not entirely true, because you are increasing difficulty, and so it's a little bit balanced. But I didn't like that the more I played the game, the more the game gave me outs. I got more life backs, I got more damage, I got more health the more that I played it. And it's one of the reasons why I like games like Slay the Spire and Monster Train, is that how I get better at the game is by getting better at the game. It's not because the game does me any favors. And so it's a personal thing. Some people love the meta growth. Some people love being able to like go to the forge and upgrade and improve. It's not my thing. I do it, obviously, because I want to succeed, so I do upgrade, and I would take upgrades. But from a design perspective, I don't love it. I would prefer instead side grades. So I put on the hat. If I were the developer, if I put on the developer hat, and this was my choice of what I would do, rather than having straight up buffs that you unlock over time to make the game easier for me, what I would prefer is side grades. So, for example, let's imagine you start with a forge and you have one upgrade, and you get 3 choices. And then you get enough money to unlock Aether boosters. And now you have a choice. You can take Arcane Connectivity, or you can take Aether boosters. You can't take both. And you have to make a decision. Do I want to be able to get more rewards? Or do I want to start with more energy? And then later on, I unlock lightweight materials. And now I have the option, I can have more rests, or I can have Aether boosters, or I can have Arcane Connectivity. So I am unlocking, there is meta progression, but the meta progression is in the direction of side grades, options that don't objectively make it better, but give me more options. I like that a lot. So imagine like Regenerative Harness is very good with the Blood Champion because she's constantly damaging and healing herself. But not so good with some of the others. Lightweight materials, you might just want to be able to rest throughout. So I like the idea of like, this would be my design. Again, I'm not saying that they should do this, because I know a lot of people like this meta game where the game does allow them to play a little bit easier by unlocking things. But if it were me, if it were my design, I would make them side grades. In a very similar way, the champions get objectively better the more you play them. And again, if it were me and it was my design, I would not have it be that all of the passives are enabled. I would do it similar to Hades. And this is one thing I like about Hades, is you have to pick. You pick one. So maybe create a random tool is the default, because it's kind of core to the character. So ignoring that. But then the level 4, level 7, level 10 are side grades. And you have to pick one. You don't get to have all 3. That would be my approach. That they're not objectively getting better, but that they give you more options. And I think personally, I think that fits the theme of the game, which is customize your run. Make a bunch of choices that will enable you to succeed. And you're not just constantly getting better, but that you constantly have more and new interesting choices, dynamics that you can add. So like right here, you get growth whenever you trigger a status. And maybe later it's that you get to add more status. I don't know what they are, right? I haven't unlocked them. But assuming that, I'm using my brain, that one of these is you get additional status every time you apply a status. It does more. Then you have to choose. Do I want the growth trigger when I trigger a status, or do I want to apply more of it at a time? That for me is interesting. It's a way to complement the build with passive choices that are not all available, but I have to choose. So that's my take on the meta progression. I think it's fine, and it wasn't super distracting for me, but again, from a large design perspective, I don't love it. Opening packs, great. This is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. Opening packs does not objectively make the game better. It's about options, and it gives you a lot of options. The market is one. I don't know quite how I would do the market. So maybe this is just random, an item, and then you unlock more and more options. I think that's fine. I don't know how I would do the market. But I have the same complaint here, that I just don't love when you immediately have the chance to just make the run easier. Oh, this one's typically not as bad because they're very minor effects. They're not meta effects, like permanent effects. I don't hate this as much. Maybe it would be for me that you start with a minimum amount of energy and you can decide to sacrifice that energy immediately at the beginning for a weaker in general relic. I don't know what it would be, but for the Forge, that would be my recommendation, that the Forge is side grades. The Champion passives, I would recommend that they should be side grades. Maybe buffed a little bit because you're only going to get one of them, but that's personal preference. But in general, really liked it. Surprising. I mean, I don't want to knock the devs. I was not expecting it to be as much fun as it was. Like, full stop, I wasn't. And I hope that the game does well. If you liked this game, I mean, I recommend it. There are things that it's early access that needs to get improved. There's some readability issues. There's some UI issues. Again, I'm not a big fan of the meta progression, but I understand a lot of people like that. So if you're into that, it's definitely there for you. But overall, would recommend this game. Even if the developer hadn't given me a key. And there will be a time, sometime in the future when a developer gives me a key and I won't recommend the game. This is not that time. I think this is a good game. I'd recommend it. At the current price, let me just double check that I'm not lying to you. The current price of Breach Wanderers is... Let me go to the store page here. I think it's under 20. Yeah, it's $15. For $15, I think this is a no-brainer. If you like the genre, you get this game. Like, it's fantastic. It's really good. It's very unique. And even if you only, you only get $11.39 in pounds. Okay, so it's $14.99 in dollars, which is what I paid for it. I absolutely would recommend it at that price. I think it's and it's gonna get better, right? This is early access. There's still a lot to come. I'm only on depth 2, which is what's available. Later on, they're planning to add more depths. So, it gets more difficult, gets more challenging. I'm sure that there's balance issues that need to get worked out. It's early, not massive player base, and player feedback is often, or not even player feedback, but player data is often what can drive a lot of like balancing stuff. So, but even in the current state, I think it's worth it. So there you go. And with that has been my impressions. I'm sticking to them. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Hope you enjoyed, for those that got free keys, I hope you enjoy the game. This is Nate. You can also call me Nathan. Please never call me Nathaniel. And I will see you guys again tomorrow for some Monster Train community content.